Bad story yesterday, and maybe you can give me the freshest update on it. Last year, Aqib Talib was erroneously cited by the Dallas Police Department as being involved in a fight, an argument, a criminal situation. Turned out to be his brother. Well, here we come again, and it's both Aqib and his brother that are being investigated in connection with, I'm going to put this correctly, in connection with an altercation that happened at the club, and both of their cars were impounded from another club. So obviously it's not just a minor little situation that's being investigated. That's where it was left as far as I know. Do you have an update on it?
Well, we talked to the Dallas police today. Jesse Paul with our paper, who's our crime guy, who's dealt with some of that on that side. I've dealt with some of the side more from the football side. It's an ongoing open investigation, Woody. They are trying to determine if a gun was fired, and if so, by whom. That's the issue. The club owner says no gun was fired, that it was an argument. Obviously, the club owner has a vested interest in saying that because he would prefer they have high-profile people go to his club. But they need to figure out, they impounded the cars. What happened was there was that altercation, there was some type of incident. Allegedly, shots were fired into the air. Then, according to WFAA TV in Dallas, Aqib and his brother left the scene. They made it sound like separate cars, but two cars down to a different location is where they were interviewed. At that point, they were interviewed, allowed to leave with no arrest, and they were doing forensic investigation and trying to find forensic evidence in the car to determine if shots were fired. It's an ongoing investigation. If in fact, and that's why it made it aggravated assault, because there's a gun involved. If in fact Aqib Talib is proven to have shot the gun, then it gets to be a very dicey situation for the Broncos in terms of the personal conduct policy, the NFL's policy. But right now it's completely up in the air as to who is responsible for this, if anyone, and then how would they prove it? You know, do they have surveillance camera? Are they gonna, you know, right now it's a very there's a lot of uncertainty, Woody, but the forensic evidence could ultimately determine if charges are filed or arrest is made. And
what we found in an ongoing, there's been no determination about Aaron Hernandez, and I'm not making comparisons other than that there is a lot of surveillance tape around these clubs by people with their iPhones. It's very difficult in the new social world to be able to do anything. I find it amazing that Great Britain, on all its highways and all of its streets, has what is called CCTV. And they can get tapes of, if you started walking at the beginning of the 16th Street Mall, they could follow you all down the street with cameras, remote cameras. And people can say, well, that's Big Brother. But it's also Big Brother looking after you, meaning looking at you, but looking after you, that if something happens like this, they're going to be able to find probably exactly what happened.
Yeah, and in the case of the Dallas thing, we don't know yet if they're going to, we assume they're going to look into if there's surveillance tape that would reveal, you know, how this thing went down. But as of like an hour ago, we were checking with the Dallas police frequently. No arrests had been made. So in that case, there's no update because no arrests have been made. But they were careful to point out it's an ongoing investigation.
And what's odd somewhat about this, because their names, Aqib is obviously the most pronounced name there, his brother, who's involved in something else, possibly. But there was a third person, supposedly, I'm using all these words, in the club that got into an argument with them.
Right.
And his name hasn't been revealed, but it supposedly was somewhat of a high-profile person, maybe another athlete.
Yeah, and that's what we haven't been able to determine that, but that's the same thing. And depending on that person's story, and it was the WFAA in Dallas made it clear that that person wanted someone arrested. He was very animated, very upset with what went down, and so he could hold the key to this. But then is it his word, you know, he said type story, and it's unfortunate for this because Talib's brother was in a similar situation last year when the Dallas PD gleefully tweeted that they had arrested Aqib when in fact they were wrong, and then they had to tweet a correction, but they never publicly really apologized. They did it through Twitter. I asked Aqib about that last year, and he said it was fine. He lives there. He understood they made a mistake, and he didn't seem upset. But this year they are being painstakingly moving careful and moving in a very glacial fashion here to not make a mistake. But if in fact it is another high-profile person, then that figures into it. But the Broncos are they've talked to Talib, they're aware of it, they're monitoring it, and right now they have his version of what happened, and until there's some type of legal action, they're just kind of in wait-and-see mode.
Troy Renck is with us, and we'll get back to conversation about a little bit more about the Broncos. We'll give you an update on the Masters and kind of catch up there. And